hope you don't mind, but I'm going to stay seated. That way I can make it through the sermon. So who feels like it's hard to know what or whom to trust these days? Anyone? With AI able to manipulate everything we see, with rampant lies and traditionally reliable news outlets being increasingly impacted by growing authoritarianism, what actually can we trust? And this is not just a theological question. It's an urgent, practical one. When life is increasingly uncertain, when transitions shake us to our core, when chaos reigns all around us, what do we hold on to? Now, those of you who know me know that I don't often preach from the Bible, but today it seemed very appropriate. What can we trust is the question that Job was haunted by in the Hebrew Bible as he sat in the ashes of his former life, stripped of wealth, health, and dignity. Job had once been a prosperous man, known for his righteousness. He trusted in God, believing that his goodness would be met with protection and blessing. But then in a series of tragedies, Job lost everything: his livestock, his wealth, his children, and even his health. And he was left with nothing but his grief and his questions. And rather than comforting him, his friends accused him, thinking he must have done something bad to deserve this suffering. Surely he must have sinned. But Job protested, "I've done nothing wrong. Why is this happening to me?" And that's the question we often ask, isn't it? When we're confronted with illness or unwanted change in our lives, why is this happening? I've been a good person. I've been a good human and acted with care. But the most devastating moment of all for Job was that his God was silent. And for those of us who believe in a higher power or rely on love to hold us, what do we do when even God or that higher power or love seems absent? When we can't seem to feel its presence? And it feels like that a lot right now, doesn't it? When we watch the daily barrage of cruel, heartless policies. Where is the greater good, the love, the kindness in the midst of it? Where is a benign universe? Especially if we see ourselves as good humans. And of course, I needn't tell you that Jesus also felt abandoned and cried out in despair, my God, why have you forsaken me?" Hanging on the cross, abandoned by his followers, humiliated and in agony, he had a very human moment of doubt. And even Jesus, who'd spoken so often about trust and faith, felt the depth of loss and despair, doubting what he could actually trust. And yet that was not the end of the story. For Job, something profound happened. After all his questioning, after all his demanding answers, God finally spoke, not with explanations, not with justifications, but with the vast, awe-inspiring mystery of the universe, saying, "Where were you when I laid the foundation of the earth? Have you comprehended the vast expanses of the earth? Can you bring forth the constellations in their seasons? Do you know the way of the dwelling of the light?" God doesn't give Job the clarity he seeks. Instead, God reminds him of the vastness of life, of creation, of mystery itself. And in this, Job is humbled, not in shame, but in realization that trust is not about understanding everything. It's about surrendering to the deeper rhythms and mystery of life. And it's about trusting that we might not be able to see the whole picture. And as for Jesus, Even in the depths of despair, his story didn't end on the cross, as you know. The account of his resurrection didn't just suggest a miracle of life after death, but rather that the spirit of love itself is never defeated. That even from the darkest tomb, something stirs. That even when all seems lost, life insists on pushing forward. Something emerges. Even in the places where we only see endings, new beginnings are quietly forming. And we see this in the cycles of nature. A forest burns, but over time, new growth emerges. A seed must break open and die before it can become a tree. And if we look at the world right now, we see destruction everywhere. But if we look deeper, we also see something else. Creation. Even amidst the rubble, new life insists on being born. New ideas and ways of being are emerging. We must trust they are. And this is what the theologian Howard Thurman called the growing edge of life. It is the force that pushes green shoots through cracks in the pavement. It is the resilience and creativity of the human spirit. It is the insistence of love to continue despite hate. Can I hear an amen? Amen. So when everything is breaking down, we can trust that life is still moving forward. The sun still rises and sets each day. We can trust that love continues to create. We can trust that something new is always being born, which of course resonates with our UU value of trust in transformation. In Buddhist teachings, impermanence is not a sign of chaos, but of life's continual unfolding. The end of one thing is just the beginning of another. And just like in panentheistic theology and science, where we trust in the ever-unfolding universe, the universe continues to expand, right, Don? Even when we cannot trust the circumstances of our lives, we can trust the ground beneath us is evolving. We can trust that there is a depth to reality that is beyond our understanding, that is not undone by suffering. The theologian Paul Tillich spoke of God not as a being who intervenes, but as the ground of being itself. The depth of existence that holds us even when everything else falls away. And if the word God means nothing to you, then I invite you to replace it with the ground of being, or love, or another word that works for you. Of course, my friends, in times of despair and helplessness, we may not always feel this truth, right? But I invite us to keep looking for it. We can look for where life is still pushing forward, where love is still breaking through, where something new is still being born. Just look at these glorious children who are with us today. They are a sign of life emerging, goodness growing. And this knowledge doesn't take away pain, but it can hold us. It can encourage us. Now, for some of us, trust is found in God or a higher power. And for others, it's in universal rhythms. It's in love itself, or it's in nature, or even in the interdependent web of all existence. Not as a force that prevents suffering, but as a presence, an interconnection that holds us through it. In the Hebrew scriptures, God doesn't promise Moses that hardship is going to be avoided. Instead, God says, I will be with you. Not I will prevent suffering, not I will give you certainty, but simply I will be with you. And this is the trust we are called into. Not that we will avoid pain, but that we do not face it alone. and that our internal being is with us through it all, our own wise inner adult, and we are with each other through this. The 14th century mystic Julian of Norwich asks us to trust life itself. Now, she lived through war, famine, and the devastation of the bubonic plague, and she lost close family members and almost died herself. And yet, during it all, she wrote the words that have comforted generations that many of you know. Say them with me if you like. All shall be well. All shall be well. And all manner of things shall be well. But let's be honest. I mean, how can we possibly say this when wars rage, when democracy is under attack, when climate change threatens our very existence, when people are being displaced, oppressed, and brutalized? How can we trust that all shall be well when suffering seems so relentless and solutions so uncertain? All shall be well? Really? For many of us, these words can feel naive or hollow or even infuriating. I was hesitant to even preach about them. But maybe we misunderstand what all shall be well really means. I know that I have at times. Does it mean that suffering will disappear, that everything will work out just as we wish, and that nothing bad will happen? Or that justice will be immediate and the pain and cruelty will cease and that life will be easy? Oh, I wish. But unfortunately, that's not what Julian meant. Instead, perhaps she meant that even in the struggle, even in the pain, we are held. Even in the chaos, there's a deeper ground of being that sustains us. Even in the storm, we can find inner peace, not the absence of difficulty, but a presence we can lean into. And I like to imagine it like being in the eye of a hurricane. While the chaos and destruction swirls around, there's a deep calm at the center. And this deep calm can be our inner peace, the sense that we are held by something greater, or simply a feeling of oneness with all there is. Can you imagine that image and imagine finding that eye, that calm for yourself? Excuse me a second. Find the calm while I blow my nose. Amen. Now, of course, it may require letting go of our usual stories, our expectations about how we think life should be. And we may need to stop seeing change as an enemy, or viewing struggle or chaos as bad. We may need to tell ourselves that all shall be well, even if we don't fully believe it. I was telling myself that this morning. As a spiritual practice, my friends, after all, when things are really dire, what do we have to lose by trusting life, by acting as if all shall be well sometime? And indeed, it's often through suffering and difficulty when we can no longer rely on our own will and control that we have to surrender to such a foundation of love holding us. And Julian invites us to trust that we will be held, even when we might be tempted to despair, hide, or flee in fear. And even if that's hard to believe, we'll have chosen a more life-giving, comforting thought than worry or fear, right? We'll be living from peace rather than anxiety. Because constant worry and fear not only create stress in our lives, but it can eat at our very souls. They can single-handedly destroy our peace and clear thinking. So in stressful situations, I ask myself, am I committed to well-being for all or fear? And if I'm committed to well-being, then All shall be well is a comforting way to embrace life, whether or not things actually turn out well. I really thought it was going to work with the cold today, but it didn't. But anyway, I'm still here, and all is well. And if we choose not to trust all shall be well, then we make decisions and plans out of fear rather than faith and hope. And we are a people of faith. So no matter how much we try to control or resist what is happening, life continues to unfold. So it's our choice whether to surrender, to go with the flow, or to fight and struggle with it. But, my friends, lest we get too comfortable thinking we have no part in transforming the world or resting our trust of the universe, all shall be well doesn't mean we stop working for justice for all. We too have a part in making life more trustworthy for everyone. We are the hands of the Spirit of life. We play a role in making things better for everyone. Indeed, when we feel secure in a deep trust and love for ourselves, we may have more strength and courage to work for a better, more compassionate world for all. So we have a part in ensuring that all shall be well. Which reminds me that the main place for us to look to trust is within ourselves. When the world and all around us is uncertain, one of the first, most reliable places we can turn is inward, to our inner adult, our higher inner self. Is your inner voice a compass that you can rely on? Yes? Some of us trust our reason. Some of us trust our intuition or faith in our own ability to navigate what comes. Do you trust your resilience? Your ability to find your way through difficulty? In the midst of challenging times, are you able to remember that you've come through hard times before? Every single one of us has. And that your wise inner self is there for you, guiding you if you listen. Quakers remind us and each other, the way will open. And the Persian poet Rumi echoes this. As you start to walk out on the way appears. So even when the path is unclear, even when we feel lost and overwhelmed, we can trust in our own ability to take the next step. And sometimes just taking that next step allows the way forward to open and reveal itself. But sometimes we don't feel like we can trust ourselves. And what if the way doesn't seem to open? What if our suffering and struggles feel overwhelming and we can't find our center? What if we keep being drawn back into the swirl of the hurricane, of the chaos? I invite you to stop looking at the news as much as possible, for one. But that's when family, friends, and community are vital. Because in times of suffering, we are held not by certainty, but by human connection that we live here every week in this congregation. When wildfires rage, people open their homes to each other. When injustice rises, allies rise in protest. When grief is overwhelming, friends sit beside us in silence. And when we are sick, our community shows up with food. This is why spiritual community matters, my friends. This is why relationships matter. Because when everything else crumbles, it is love that saves us. And we have the systems in place here at Chalice with our pastoral care team, our neighborhood networks, and our justice groups to work together to help one another and the wider community. We can partner with one another so we're not alone. So perhaps in the end, this is the deepest truth. We cannot trust that bad things won't happen. But as members of Chalice, we can trust we do not have to face them alone. Because when life is unsteady, it is others' hands that hold us up, that keep us steady. And I know many of you have experienced that here. So, my friends, here's what I think we can trust during these difficult times. We can trust life, even when we doubt, even when we don't know how. We can choose to trust that a way will open. We can trust in something greater, whether we call it God, higher power, love, or the deeper ground that holds all things, the ground of being. We can trust ourselves, our resilience, our courage, our history, our inner voice and ability to take the next step. And we can trust in one another, that love, community, action, and connection will carry us through. This trust doesn't erase suffering. It doesn't prevent hardship, but it can hold us. And sometimes that's enough to make it through to the next day and the next. It can help us stay in the eye of the storm and not be sucked into the swirl. So I invite us, my friends, this month of trust to explore what it might be like to approach life with greater trust, to strengthen our faith in life. And I know it's a word I am working with constantly, to trust. Rather than approaching life filled with fear and worry, I know I want to try approaching it with greater trust. Will you join me? Yes. Anyone else? Yes, good. Experiment with the practice of saying to yourself, all shall be well, even if you don't fully believe it. Play with the possibility of trusting life. Look for what's good. There's still so much good all around us. Look for what's working. Experiment with the idea of being held in an all-encompassing love. And my friends, we can still act for justice together while trusting our efforts will make a difference. Amen. And as you try this, notice how it feels to operate from a place of trust. And engage in conversations exploring this idea of trusting life. And I really look forward to hearing what you discover and share it with each other, because that is how we keep each other buoyant during this time. My beloveds, may we trust what holds us even when we cannot see the way. May we trust in the power of life to renew itself. May we trust in ourselves and in one another. And may we know, without a doubt, that we are held by love. May it be so.